Welcome to So Many Questions, the podcast where curiosity meets leadership. Join host Rebecca Goodman-Stephens, CEO of law firm Moses Singer, as she sits down with bold thinkers and thought leaders to discuss what motivates and drives their leadership styles and decisions. From candid stories to aha moments, we go behind the scenes to find out what really drives them. Enjoy the episode.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our podcast today, So Many Questions. I'm your host, Rebecca Goodman-Stephens, the CEO at Moses and Singer. And I'm so excited to have with us today Ashley Fina from a ton of businesses, actually. So we're going to get into what Ashley does and how she does it. Welcome, Ashley. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
I want to get straight into it in terms of your background, what led you to where you are today. Obviously, you were involved early on with a family business, Michael C. Fina, at I think 25. For the record, we're both still 27. Like that's kind of what we put out there.
Yeah,
but yeah. So what happened?
For the last 13 years, It's been great.
Exactly.
So I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My grandparents started Michael C. Fina, the retail business. I always thought I was going to work in our retail business. My father and uncle then created a B2B corporate gifting business, Michael C. Fina Recognition. I joined that business after college. That was the larger of the two businesses. Worked in every single part of the business, picking, packing, shipping, sales, customer service, you name it, I did it. And was planning to get my MBA, leave the business for a few years. And then unfortunately, my dad's brother, my uncle, passed away.
Sorry. Yeah.
And I was told I couldn't get my MBA. I needed to stay. It was also 2009, and we had lost 30% of our revenue at the time due to the recession. And so I came in and I was made CEO and president just as I was turning 25. And
No pressure.
None at all. Lots of tears.
Yeah. So what made you accept to do that? Like what was going through your mind, and like what made you kind of take it on and be like, yeah, I'm going to do this?
I don't think I believed it was real. I honestly, I had
I could see that.
a few of my cousins that were my partners. We were all working together, and my father was still, in and out of the office. And I think in my head, I was like, oh, he's naming me president, and I'm going to become president over time.
Right. That you had a kind of a time frame to prove yourself and kind of get into that role. So you knew the business inside and out, basically. Was there an area that you liked more than another, or like an area that you found more challenging?
I always loved sales.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed, we worked with Fortune 1000s on how to drive engagement and incentives within those companies, and really how to recognize and reward their workforce. And it actually came from our retail business. So in our retail business, we were celebrating people's life milestones, their engagement, their weddings, their graduations. And in this business, we were celebrating their professional milestones. And that was really the thread.
Yeah.
And so we were really in this happy business of making memories for these important milestones.
That's an interesting, because I was wondering like how you kind of go from, I mean, there are always connections and things, right? But how you go from retail to, performance and reward. And it was really before it was a cool thing to be doing, right? I mean, because I know there are a lot of platforms now that exist, there's a huge market now, but at the time that was not the case. It was kind of visionary, quite frankly.
It was. What had happened was there were personal Estee Lauder, Thomas Watson Jr., they had all been personal customers of the store. And then they said, you know what, I have these employees, I want to buy them gifts. And they started buying corporate gifts from us. And then my father and uncle as retailers, people were getting these emblematic clocks, watches, key tags. And what were they doing with it? Putting it in a drawer.
Yeah.
And so as retailers, they said, let's give people things they really want. And so they created an entire catalog of gifts, from barbecues to golf clubs to what they called lifestyle items that people could really enjoy to celebrate their professional milestones.
I love that. And kind of seeing an opportunity that had nothing, face value, nothing really to do with kind of what they were currently doing, and to be able to shift into that? I mean, that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
That's been sort of the mantra of the
Yeah.
family, that it's just been about innovation from generation to generation. The
Is that your
retail
tagline?
business.
Should be. It's a pretty good one.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually, at this point, we don't have an operating family business for the moment. We had exited our employee recognition business.
Right.
We pivoted it to consulting and HR tech SaaS. So we started working with, for example, large hospital systems. How do you drive the behaviors in that workforce?
Mm-hmm.
And creating that program. And then we had technology to track the points. And so that was an innovation. And as we grew that business as a family, we saw just macroeconomic conditions of Sequoia coming in
Yeah.
and backing competitors of ours. And we said, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
as shareholders, this is probably the right time for us to either acquire a business or be acquired.
That's such a great skill set, though, really being able to have that vision of what's shifting in the market. Oftentimes, kind of tied to our idea and like, this is what we should be doing. But to be able to see that could shift and know the right time to get out, I mean, that's a huge skill that I think even big firms sometimes miss out on and kind of continue on their path because that's what they've always done. So I think I really love that about your story and kind of your career path. And now you're in a not really completely different, but you've kind of shifted again. You founded Oxygen, amazing concept. What took you there, and kind of what are your takeaways in terms of that step?
Sure. So after the sale, I decided I need a little bit of a break.
You think? Yeah.
In the midst of having the children, selling
Yeah,
the
that's a real break.
company. And I started executive coaching, and I have been and still do work with CEOs of companies in the Valley, private equity backed businesses. And I kept hearing the same soundbite over and over. And it was, I really can't get anything done because my team members, who are really high performers as individual contributors, they don't really know how to lead high performing teams. And so we saw a real void in the marketplace.
Yeah, and it typically like those people are kind of promoted because they're technically experts or they're great at like a specific siloed task, and then they're suddenly like, "Oh, you're promoted. You need to deal with people," and they're like, "Well, no one taught me how to do that, right?" Like, yeah.
Exactly. Like the
And we're
best.
surprised.
I mean, I'd be curious to hear from you. Like,
Yeah.
how did you learn to lead teams?
Oh, I didn't have any training in that. Obviously, I have a background as a clinical psychologist. Like, I understood people to some extent, but a lot of that training doesn't necessarily help you in your own life, like in terms of just really your own self-awareness. I think it's taken me a while to really find what my identity was and what resonated with who I am to really become a more authentic leader. I'd say that's happened over the last probably 7 years. Just by trial and error, but I didn't ever have training or any real exposure. I think sometimes you learn by kind of seeing things that you like in others that resonate with you. You see also what you don't want to be at times is equally
100%.
important, right? Like, this is something I don't want to do. And then just learning about who I am as a person, what's important to me, what my values are. I've kind of infused who I am as a leader, but I didn't get sent to training.
And you're with 99.9% of leaders. And that's where we said, you know what, there's so much available for the C-suite.
Yeah.
As a C-suite leader, you can get an executive coach, you can get your EMBA, you can, we're in New York, you can go to Columbia, NYU, take an executive education course. But if you are a mid-level manager or even senior manager in a company, where do you learn these skills?
And even those executive education, I mean, I love all of that, but there's not necessarily the people skills component to it.
100%.
So, and if you're not in an environment where you're getting that feedback day to day either of like, this is, appropriate, this is not, this is how you should handle things. I think you're not also getting it live either. So
100%. And
yeah.
And this group of people are like probably some of the most stressed out, burned out group right now. And it's because they haven't been given these skills to really lead their team.
And you're kind of expecting that group to also communicate and kind of hold the company flag and like distill messaging and be inspirational and all this stuff. And yet they're kind of sometimes in it above their heads a little bit. So I think it's great. And it's a fantastic group to focus on in terms of just really supporting the next generation of leaders too, right? So you mentioned the coaching component, which I love. And I could see how that's so interesting too, from a research standpoint, purely just to, to see what the trends are, what the challenges are, and how to kind of solve for that. Is there anything that surprised you in being an executive coach? Anything that you kind of have encountered and like, oh, I didn't expect to have this discussion, or I didn't expect this to come up? Like nothing specific, obviously confidential,
no, of course,
but just like trends or like something where you're like, oh, this is interesting.
I think the most surprising, but not really, is just this like emergence of coaching, the convergence, I should say, of coaching, therapy, and consulting, like all in one. And so when I started coaching, it was really around executive coaching, business coaching, and I soon learned that it was so much more about the personal growth and development in addition to the professional growth and development. And
you can like separate those two.
100%. And then having like modes of therapy. Over time, I realized there were certain areas that would be really useful to me and my clients to help them push those personal growth boundaries.
That's really interesting. Just personally, a lot of people say to me, well, how, you're a clinical psychologist, how you, and I'm like, it's the same job. Like literally it's the same job, except for now I have industry expertise. Like it's literally the same. And it's funny what you're saying about the therapy, kind of components. We were on a panel last week talking about relationship building, and that came up a lot in terms of examples of like how to approach specific situations, like, just techniques and skills from therapy. So I could really see that. Is there anything else that you've learned about yourself in that process?
For me, I mean, I can't be like the shoemaker's daughter. So any of like the modes that I am working on with clients, I've gone through myself. And
that's a fair point.
And I'd say like for me, my personal why is the learning and development of people and communities. And I believe that philosophy just as much for myself as my clients and my customers at Oxygen as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's key too to be credible, right? In terms of, when you're speaking to someone about how to approach something, you have your own kind of perspective and lived experience from it, for sure. So I'm like a firm believer in training and all of that, completely get it and love the what you're doing. But I personally struggle and wonder, I want to ask you this question, maybe you'll help me with this. Like sometimes people are not coachable and not trainable. Like how do you identify that? And what do you do with that? Do you agree with me? Maybe you don't agree with me. Yeah.
No, I do agree with you. I mean, I think this ties to like what I see like the biggest downfall of any business, startup, mid-stage, later stage, and it's not really setting the boundaries of your culture. And really like so many companies have these values written on the wall. Right? And like, but no one really knows what they mean. And leadership is actually just a combination of different behaviors. And so it's really up to us as leaders to say, like, this is the culture we're trying to create. This is our expectation. And to show the people on our team, these are our expectations around it. And these are like the ways you really bring these values to life. At Michael C. Fina Recognition, when we were changing the culture, one of our values was reach for the highest level of performance and treat people with respect and care. Now, there were some of team members who didn't necessarily treat people as well, and they were really high performers. But then what did our culture become? It became treat everyone with respect and care.
Unless you're performing really well.
Unless you're a top performer, then you don't have to. Right? So culture is really what we tolerate. But I think the same goes to like this lifelong learning and like openness to learn. We can create that as a culture. I really believe that anyone who is aligned with your company's values, this being potentially one of them, they can grow and develop the skills they need. But if they really don't share these values with you, I think that's when they probably aren't a right fit for the organization.
Yeah, and I love that. I think it's a super important step. We're actually going to be rolling that out too, where you kind of break down like what do these values actually look like in real life? Like what does that look like in an interview? What does respect look like in a meeting? What does being curious look like when we're talking about a project? Like actually getting real with it in terms of the behaviors and not just having it be nice words. I think it's worse, nearly you're better off not even having any values on the wall and just saying, you know what, we're going to do what we want versus pretending and then not aligning behaviors
100%.
to that.
So it's like breaking it down into these
Yeah.
size, like day in and day
Mhm.
out. Like, what are some of the things at Moses and Singer, right? When someone gets, if they're always putting the needs of clients first, as
Yeah.
an example, like when someone gets that call Friday at 5 p.m.
Right.
and they have this urgent matter that needs to be resolved,
Yeah.
what's the mindset?
Yeah. What's the mindset and what's the value there? No, I really like that. In terms of, kind of earlier what you were highlighting, I think is like a huge game changer, the whole concept of being open-minded, innovation, thinking differently. How do you kind of check yourself on a daily basis to be sure that you are still doing that? Like, because I can imagine like it's a bit of a dance, right? Like, are we thinking differently because you're building something out? How do you kind of remain open to a message that might say, hey, this might need to be going in this direction or maybe completely different direction, or what are you doing to kind of check yourself on that?
Great question, right? So when we came out with Oxygen, and it's around training managers, and it's live training. It may be via Zoom, but it's live training,
Yeah.
right? Not on, on demand
Not
courses.
webinar or whatever, yeah.
Exactly. And AI is front and center
Yeah.
of everything, right? And then people started saying, like, as we were rolling out Oxygen, are the middle managers, are they going to go away, or there going to be no managers? Which
hopefully not within the next year. Like, let's just have this launch first. Yeah.
Well, what we're finding
Yeah.
with AI is actually the manager's role is going to become even more important than ever before, right? And even with AI, the managers are going to be, in addition to their teams, they're going to be like the prompt king and queens that really have to know to orchestrate everything. So I think this was a really good example. I was just on a retreat with my partner Nick in Texas last week, and where we've come to terms, we know AI is front and center, but for us, like, our value is to keep it as like the highest value program that we can. We don't want these on-demand programs, but we know AI can play a role. And so we really want to bring the hybrid of human with AI. And so we went through this deep dive of like checking ourselves of like, are we we're not going to be this like straight up AI company, right? That's not in our DNA, but we know that AI will be an enabler, not just for our business, but for all of the participants and managers that go through our programs.
Yeah, and it seems like the human component becomes even more crucial, to your point, right? Like the human still has to ask the question, still has to review, still has to say, hey, does this align with kind of what we're trying to do? And then the people skills of managing, being sure that everyone's, rowing in the same direction, working together, that doesn't go away. And I guess more of a shift to those skills, which is already what you're focusing on. So
I think as an early stage startup, in certain ways, it becomes easier to like make these pivots and stretch the innovation. I think it was harder as like a middle market, 400 employee company in the last business, just because the base and foundation is so strong and it's so hard to change the tires while the car's moving.
Less nimble.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When you're looking for people to be on your team, is there like a key attribute that like is a complete yes? And is there an attribute that like is a complete hard no? Like what are those?
The people for us, it's like really around openness, willingness to learn, ability to take feedback, because if they don't have these core skills, we're a company that's based on learning and development. If the team members don't have these skills,
not ideal.
We're kind of in big trouble.
Yeah.
And my partner and I, that's like, he also had another business, then became an executive coach. And so we both have done a lot of learning and development personally. to just like have that as the mantra.
That you have to be always learning and like questioning yourself and like, yeah. Is there a deal breaker kind of attribute where you just know this is not going to work with someone, like a specific characteristic or?
I think someone who, again, really can't take feedback
Yeah.
is like a no-go,
Yeah.
right? And that really it takes it so personally that they can't receive certain
Yeah.
feedback. That for us has been like the number one.
Makes sense. Yeah, because there's not any level of like insight and being able to question and kind of grow, all the other attributes that you're looking for, clearly. Yeah. How was it, if we go back to the beginning of kind of going into a family business and then shifting, obviously now you're kind of leading your own business, like how was that? Because that's very complex, I can imagine. Like within a family, families are families, right? Challenging, and like the dynamics there. And then you're in a business context and all of those layers. Like how did you navigate that? What tips would you give other people who are in amazing family businesses to kind of help navigate the personal and professional? Like that's where it's really
Yeah.
intertwined, right? In a family business.
We looked at ourselves as wearing multiple hats and being able to say like, in this moment,
Yeah.
you know, Dad,
Yeah.
I'm wearing my family hat and I'm talking to you as your daughter.
Yeah.
Or right now, like we're looking at the macroeconomic conditions of our company, and I have my shareholder hat on and I'm uncertain of like what the future holds. Or, you know what, I'm the CEO today and we have to launch our largest customer in 6 weeks, like all hands on deck. So it was really being able to communicate, like the key, and you brought up like communication
Yeah.
earlier, right? Is like being able to really communicate where I am in this very moment.
I'm smiling because the panel we had last week, that was literally one of the techniques that kind of came out of it. It was actually how to navigate situations where now leadership is no longer like, I know, you don't, just do it. It's very much more collaborative, and there can be blurred lines of like becoming too friendly and that was kind of what came up, was like the hat idea of like, right now I'm talking to you as like, I'm your boss kind of hat. And then the next one is like, you know, as a friend and peer, like this is kind of how I think that's a great tool that anyone can kind of use, even if they're not in a family business, to kind of
100%.
navigate.
100%.
So what is next? Because clearly you're a visionary. You don't have to, we're not going to tell everyone your secrets, but like, is there anything on the horizon where you're like, oh, this would be a really good idea for a business?
I think
Or you
right
still
now,
think you're like in the next 5-10 years of oxygen still?
I think I'm still in the next years of oxygen. I'm more excited, like having come off the retreat last week with my partner.
Yeah.
I'm more excited than ever before. I'd say it's like really interesting to go from your family members being your partners to someone who I actually, until 2 years ago, I had never spoken to before.
How did you meet? I have so many follow-up questions on it. How did you meet him? How did you know he's a good partner? Like all that stuff.
We have a friend in common who created a community called Post Exit Founder, PEF. And I had this idea, and I was talking to another member of the group, and he said to me, "Oh, well, do you know Nick? He sold his business. He's been an executive coach. He has the same idea." I said, "No, I don't know
We're meant
Nick,
to know,
but
like, yeah.
can you introduce us?" And
Yeah.
so we met and we started talking, and he was actually a little further along of like already having done discovery calls, thinking through the development, and then we went through our own like very extensive like partner dating process. And I think our backgrounds as coaches, and then my family business background also, I think like just really made us hone in on like some of the biggest challenges that partners don't think through. Like, what do you want your workday to look like?
So
Like,
important. Like so
exactly.
like tangible, like, yeah.
I mean, like I think every single role can be summed into 4 C's. The 4 C's are content, culture, compensation, and control.
Yeah.
And so every role can be summed into
Into
these 4 C's. And so we really looked at like, how do each of us like to control? How do we navigate things?
That's a great framework for anyone to have a discussion, even coming into a higher level role, to say, because you can have the job description, but really an in-depth conversation around like, how much information do you need to have? Like how should we be communicating together? Like, how do you want to feel when you're coming in? What kind of
Totally.
questions did you ask
Well,
each other?
Oh, I mean, it was everything. I mean, it was everything, no one, and it's like the same thing with personal relationships.
Yeah.
No one ever wants to talk about like money,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like just like
Kind of
it's
key though.
I know. And so like we asked all those questions, right? Like, what do you want to make? Right? Like what would make you excited? How do you want to spend your days? How much time can you dedicate for now
Yeah.
on a weekly, monthly basis?
Mhm.
Where are the trade-off decisions? So we like really went through this in-depth process and looked at it as if we were like getting married
Yeah.
professionally.
I think you have a future business there. I'm just thinking out loud, but like there's definitely an in-depth kind of assessment situation. Maybe that will come out soon. So just watch this space. No, I love that. And I think I'm just thinking back to a panel that we had together with YPO, just thinking about topics around how do you choose a partner who that's a big life decision, right? Like it's nearly
Huge.
as important as your life partner in your personal life, right? It really, it's
100%.
huge. And I think that's great advice to anyone thinking about, teaming up with someone else in a business and what they need to think about. Really briefly on YPO, because you opened my eyes and heart to this amazing organization. I'm super grateful for that and I'm loving it. What are kind of your takeaways so far? And you've clearly been involved at multiple levels and you're kind of all in, but what's your hot take on YPO and kind of where it's headed and kind of how you view your investment in this organization?
Sure. I mean, I've been in the organization 14 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't, yeah.
I was like, I was 3 when I joined, in case you were wondering.
No, I knew that.
In case you were wondering.
Yeah.
So, in my early years, I would attend a few events and then I was in Forum, right?
Yeah.
The monthly group
Mm-hmm.
that really becomes your personal and professional advisory board for your entire life. And I think YPO was instrumental in helping me get through the sale of the business and navigating really what came next. And so I'm really grateful to YPO. And as a result, that's what really was like the impetus for me to step up and get more involved and serve as learning officer and now the current chapter chair. And I really believe, and this, like you get what you're able to give.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a balance in it all. So I think if I tell my husband that I'm going to fly to one more YPO event, we'll see if I'll be allowed back in the house.
Not allowed back in the country. Yeah.
I mean, he's been such a sport with how much I've put into this organization. But, we have an amazing chapter here in New York Metro, and I'm so proud of just what we've been able to do as a chapter and as a community and just like building the engagement. And I think like the next steps and where YPO has been focused, especially within the Northeast, is just like continuing on diversity, not just business diversity, because obviously being in New York, lots of real estate, lots of finance, but we're getting greater diversity, and then really like the diversity of members, a lot more women than we've ever had, and a lot more minority members than we've ever had. And it's just amazing because I mean, in New York, this is a melting pot we're in, and to not have that
it's not.
is not a reflection of the
We're
world
going towards
we live
what we
in.
need to be in that. What I love about it is it's absolutely everything that I thought it wasn't. So I love that because I kind of had preconceived ideas that it was just going to be like, oh, we're going to fundraise and like network and, it was going to be very transactional. And what sold me on actually being involved, because otherwise I wasn't going to do it, was really the 5%, the concept of really sharing that 5%, really connecting with people at a deeper level, making true friendships and connections that then obviously lead to business, right? Like that's a natural outcome for the most part. Might not be now, might be later, whatever that is, but really that it really isn't a transactional kind of conditional
100%.
type of organization. And that was my preconceived idea. So I'm very happy, surprised in that sense, and I'm very much enjoying it. So obviously we've spoken about the attributes for a CEO, for a manager, for people that work with you. I know you've invested in businesses too. How do you assess the leadership team and their capacity to deliver on a mission, like on a vision, right? What do you look for in a founder when you're investing in a business? I know that's a very everyone asks a question.
it actually, and not to sound like so boring to all my answers, but it's not so different to what I'm looking for in the people that I work with at my company, right?
Yeah.
Like that they
Makes sense.
have to have an openness, they have to have the agility to be able to shift and be nimble enough to shift quickly.
Yeah.
And they really also have to know when to be able to ask for help. Like
that's a huge one.
It's a huge one. It's a huge one. But I mean, if I have I have like some amazing entrepreneurs that I've, had the ability to work with or invest in, and like the ones that give me that call of like, hey, like we're new to B2B selling. Like, how do we approach this? We came out of, B2C.
Yeah. That's such an important message, and I think for everyone listening in today too, because a lot of times high performers and people achieve, like there's a feeling that, you don't want to ask for help. It means that you don't know. But I think actually on the contrary, it's showing that you know what you don't know, knowing your limits, knowing when to reach out. It's such a huge, if to anyone listening today, if there's one thing you can do is ask for help at some point, that when you need help, like that's a huge one.
100%. And also not like, I'd say don't rush. Like if I could tell my younger self one thing.
That's my closing question. So I'm so glad you're anticipating that.
Don't rush the process. Yeah. It's like this messy middle, and this process where all the learning and all the goodness is, that really like it's that journey, right? It's that messy middle.
Like go through
going through that process, and like don't rush through it.
How do you not rush? Like I completely agree, and I think I'm probably working on that. So I'm going to ask you the question. Like, so how do you not rush through? Like, what would you say to yourself to not rush through the process? Like,
I'd say moment? As you're about to make some really critical decisions, can you pause for a second and say, what are 3 alternatives that I may not be thinking of? And like, who are a few people that I could talk to that may be able to give me a perspective that's totally contrary to what I'm thinking?
That's such a good skill too, to be able to take a step back. Oftentimes it's like a false sense of urgency, like this has to be done. And we create it sometimes ourselves, sometimes other people kind of help with that. I think that's great advice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for so many questions. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of So Many Questions, where curiosity meets leadership. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with a colleague and subscribe to and rate So Many Questions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. To learn more about host Rebecca Goodman-Stephens or law firm Moses Singer, visit mosessinger.com. Join us for a new episode when Rebecca sits down with another bold thinker and thought leader to explore what motivates and drives their leadership style and decisions. Until next time, stay curious.